Hey everybody, welcome back to PeopleSoft channel and to the fourth episode of PeopleSoft reporting using PS Query. In this episode, we are going to study about expressions in PS Query. So inside PeopleSoft Query Manager, we have this tab called as expressions. So what are expressions and why do we need them? So if you see when we create a query, by default, we may select one or more records, we may choose the fields, we may give them some criteria, and then we run the query. That gives us the required report. But what if we have a situation where we do not want to display certain data from the database as it is? Rather, we need to manipulate the data with some conditions and then display the manipulated data to the user. Or we may need to calculate new values out of the existing data and then display those calculated value in the new columns in the database, in the report. So we cannot do these things just by writing plain SQLs, and we may need to write additional statements in order to obtain these updated calculated data. That's what expressions are for. So in this episode, we will see a couple of examples which will help you get started your journey with expressions. So I hope you are excited to learn, and without further delay, let's get started. So let's say we are working on a query in which we have taken the requisition header record and couple of important fields from this record. So when we run the report, we have this report as expected. Now, suppose we have a requirement that we need to feed this data into third-party system. For this, they need the requisition information in one column in which they have business unit concatenated with requisition ID in one single column, just like this. So now in database, we do not have such column. However, we can use expressions to generate a new column in our report and display the BU and requisition ID into single column as expected. So to do that, let's click on expressions, click on add expressions. Now we need to select the expressions type, and for this requirement, we can go with character because that suits our requirement. However, we have these many different types available. So let's say our new column is going to be character, and let's say the length of the column is going to be 20. So I'm assuming that is the maximum length a column is going to take. And now let's write our expression text. So let's take brackets, and first we need the business unit, which is coming from E record. So E dot business unit, and then I will use this double pipes. This is the concatenation operator in SQL. Then I would say dash in single quote because I'm using this as a string to separate business unit and requisition ID. And then I will use another concatenation operator and I would say E dot requisition ID. So that's our expression text. I will say OK, and it is present in the expression list. Now, by default, it won't show inside your list of fields here. In order to use that expression into fields, you need to click on this use as field. And now inside the fields tab, you can see the expression available. So let's change the heading to give it some meaningful name. I would say it is BU and requisition ID. So let's click on OK and let's click on run. And as you can see, we have successfully generated a new column with the data formatted as expected. So this is why we need expressions, because such column does not exist in PeopleSoft databases, but using expressions, we can generate these new column. Now let's take another example for concatenation. Say we need to display the merchandise amount for these requisition lines, and we need to include the currency also in the amount. So we'll go to records, we'll search for requisition line, we will join it with our header table. And then the field for merchandise amount is this one coming from the requisition line table. So if we click on run, we can see the merchandise amount. However, the currency is missing from this field because it's only a number field. Now, if we assume that all these transactions are in US dollar, we can assign a currency to all of these values. For that, let's go to expressions, click on add expressions. Now, expression type, even though our merchandise amount is in number, the final new field is going to be a character because the number will be concatenated with a dollar sign. So let's write the same way we written concatenation thing for the first example. So inside brackets, I have dollar sign here, and then I'm concatenating it with merchandise amount. So there is one more quick way you can select field. So if you see, we have this option called as add field. From here, we can select the required field. Let's say merchandise amount, and then we will get the field here. Let me slightly adjust the brackets, and I would say the maximum length is going to be 20. Let's click on OK. Say use as field for this one, and let's give a meaningful name. Let's say it is requisition line mount. Click on OK, and when you run the query, you have the requisition line amount with the currency sign as expected. Now let's take another example to understand the use case of expressions. Let's say we want to create a report which includes all the requisitions in the system along with their purchase order ID. To create such a report, let's start with the requisition header table. Let's select few important fields from this requisition header table. Now, to obtain its PO information, let's include the PO line district table. Let's give an outer join and let's select PO ID. So if we run the query, we can see we have the requisition fields coming from the first table along with the PO ID coming from the PO line district table. So if you see this looks good, however, if you see certain rows, for example, if I go to last rows, there are many requisitions for which the PO ID is blank. So actually this means that the PO ID is not yet created for these requisitions. However, as this is a blank value or a null value, this might create confusion to the person who is reading the report. So to handle such scenarios, we can use the Oracle functions called as NVL to handle these null values. And whenever we have null values present, for example, this row, there is no PO created. So instead of displaying null values, we can display a text saying PO not created. Now, how can we do that? As you have guessed it, we can do it using expressions. So let's go to expressions, click on add expressions. Let's write your functions, which would be NVL. And then the first parameter would be the field name, which is POID in this case. It's coming from B table, so B dot POID. And the second parameter would be the string. So what to do if the first parameter is null? So if the first parameter is null, we will say PO not created. So let's complete the function. Now let's select the expression type as character and give the length roughly as 20. Click on OK. So let's use this as a field in our PeopleSoft report. And now they will remove the existing field, which is the POID, because as per our function, we want to display either a POID if it is present, or if it is null, then display this message. Hence, this field is no longer required. So we will remove this. Let's give some meaningful name to this column. So let's call it as EUID. Hit OK, and let's click on run. Now, as expected, this is our new column, and these are the actual purchase orders created for these requisitions. So let's scroll ahead in our report to find null values. So if you see for this requisition, PO is not yet created. So it was a null value, but our expression handled it through MVL. And as expected, for null value, we got the message saying PO not created. So this is a great way, and oftentimes this is useful to handle null values because otherwise it may create confusion in the mind of a person who is reading the report. So it's always a good practice to handle null values, which we can do using expressions. Now, another important use case for expressions is to create case statements in PeopleSoft PS query. For example, if I go to query and from the first table, the requisition header table, let's select origin. So if we run the query, we have origin coming up and we have different values such as ONL, POS, and then a couple of other values such as BCH, etc. Now, we want the user to understand the meaning of these values. So let's check if we have translate values available. But unfortunately, for this field, there are no translate setup available. So in this case, we can use key statements to generate the strings or text for the origin value. So I would go to expression. I would click on add a new expression. And I have already prepared a case statement. So the field name is a.origin. So I would say case a.origin. And when it is ONL, then display it as online entry. Similarly for POS, display purchasing system, BCH for batch transactions, and CRT for par location replenishment. And finally, end the statements. So you can easily find the syntax of case statement online, and you can prepare a statement accordingly. Now I would just adjust the type, it should be character, and the length, I would say a maximum length is going to be 30 because I see this is the maximum string in our case statement. So let's click on OK, make it use as field. Now give it some meaningful name such as origin description and then click on run. As you can see, using case statement, we have successfully transformed or manipulated this origin value to a meaningful. For example, ONL is giving as online entry, whereas POS is giving as purchasing system. So case statements are often useful. They work as if-else statements, and these are widely used in SQL statements to generate reports. And as you saw, we can use expressions to generate case statements. So another important use case for expressions is to use aggregate functions in SQL. So in the last episode, we already discussed that we can use the fields tab, and if we click on edit, we can use aggregate functions for a particular field in order to generate group by and aggregate results. But if you see, these are only some of the most popular aggregate functions from PeopleSoft system or SQL system. However, if we want to use some other aggregate functions, for example, this is the documentation for SQL developer and aggregate functions. And if we scroll down, we can see there are lots of different aggregate functions supported by Oracle SQL developer. Now, what if we want to use, let's say, this function called as median? So this function is not part of this list. So in this case, we can use expressions to use this aggregate function. Let's say we have a use case that we want to display the median amount for requisition merchandise amount for each business unit in the system. So let's see how we can do that. The first step would be to include only business unit because we need the group by data by business unit. The next step is to create a new expression. So let's click on add expression. Let's write the function which is median. and let's select the field for which you want to calculate median. It's going to be merchandise amount. Now, since this is in aggregate function and not a plain text, let's select this checkbox which says aggregate function. Now, we also need to change the expression type because we are calculating the median amount. So it should be number, and let's also provide length and decimal. On a safer side, I will say length as 10 and decimal as 2. Click on OK. So click on use as field. Let's give it some meaningful value. And let's click on run. So as you can see, we could successfully find what is the median merchandise amount for each business unit for a requisition system. So like this, we can use various functions from Oracle SQL Developer, not only the aggregate functions, but also the single row functions or some of the popular functions like substring, replace, reject, etc. And that can be done using expressions. Now, another very useful way to use expressions is to manipulate the date formattings in the report. For example, this is a report coming from the requisition header table. We have this field called as last date timestamp, which indicates when was the requisition last updated. Now this field is a date time field, so it includes date as well as time on which the requisition was last updated. Now here, the requirement is that user only wants the date part of this field. It does not want time. So we can use expressions to incorporate the date part from this field, and it's very easy using expressions. So let's go to expressions, add a new expression. Now this time we will select expression type as date. So as soon as we select date, if you notice the length and decimals parameters have become grayed out because date has a fixed length of 10 in the PeopleSoft system. Now next thing we need to do is select the field, which is a.last date time update, and that's it. We do not need to include any function. Because of this expression type, the system will automatically convert the date timestamp into date. Click on OK. Use this as a field in our report, and if we click on run, we can see a new column has been generated with just the date prior from this particular field. So this is a very useful way to include date in our report. Now, another way we can use expressions is to calculate date difference. So as part of data analysis, often this is a requirement to calculate the difference between two dates. So let's understand with an example. Say the director wants to know how many days usually an approver takes to approve the requisitions after it has been created. So if we go to records for a requisition header table, we have the two fields. The first one is the requisition date and the second one is the approval date. So this field indicates when the requisition was approved. So if we click on run, we have these two dates available. So basically, we want to create a difference between the approval date and the requisition date to understand how many days did an approver take to approve the requisition. So let's go to expression and let's click on add an expression. So as we are going to count the difference in terms of number of days, the expression type is going to be number, and let's just say 4 as the maximum length, and we don't need decimals because our answer is going to be a whole number in terms of number of days. So here in the expression text, we can use this functions. This is nothing but the meta SQL, which is a part of PeopleSoft system. So date difference function will calculate the difference between the two dates which are present here. So the first one is going to be the requisition date and the second one is going to be the approval date. So let's click on OK. Let's say use as field. Let's give some meaningful name. Say number of days to approve. Hit run. And as you can see, for most of the requisitions, it's 0. That means it was approved on the same day. However, for some of the requisitions, the approver took time. For this one, he took 6 days to approve the requisition. Let's go and find. So here, if you see, we do not have the approval date present here. That's because the requisition is not yet approved. And that is why we have a null value present for these requisitions. Similarly, if we scroll down for some of the requisitions, an approver took almost a month to approve. So this is often a useful way whenever you want to perform the data analysis around the number of dates on a particular transactions. We can use expressions to calculate these date differences. So on this note, I will take your leave for the day, and I really hope this episode was helpful to you. So please make notes, keep practicing, and I will see you in the next episode. Thank you.